I remember a marvellous fur coat that I found in Camden Market that she wears in probably the first series, and it's so great with its collar and, you know, very swish and very austere, just marvellous. But it had been badly stored, and we unfortunately think rats had on it.
So this is our stock, our warehouse. Everything in here has either been made here or it's an original piece. And the kind of life cycle of our costumes is that they get, if we start off, pretend that, well, there's obviously different routes, but one route is that if it gets made in the workroom, then it's made for a specific production. Then we will keep it on embargo, we keep it aside until the production is out, because we don't want it to go back into stock and then someone else will hire it and their production time is shorter, so then it has screen time with someone else before the ones who originally commissioned it. So we try to make sure that doesn't happen. But when it's come back into stock, because that's where it ends up after it's been used, then it can be just used over and over again on multiple productions. We only use natural materials. That includes the thread as well when we make things, because we quite often re-dye things. And if you then have used something synthetic, then it's not going to work. So that's something that needs to be thought about from the very beginning of making a garment, because we want these garments to be used for the next 30, 40 years maybe. So this is a lot of original kind of pieces that we just constantly reuse. So it's always been like this. It's a very much kind of circular way of working. If there's something that goes out a lot and it's really a good garment, we quite often use that and make duplicates. And also what we've been doing a lot recently is we try to expand our size range, because obviously I don't think it's so much that people are getting necessarily bigger. I think it's more that there's better representation on screen. There's also, when you get older garments, this survival bias, which is people think that people were so much smaller because that's the clothes that you have left, but that's not necessarily the case. It's probably because they weren't used as much.
Yeah.
So the clothes that people used a lot, which might have been slightly normal sizes, they have just not survived because they were used. So we've got a few different labels. So this one is a label that we made up because we've realized that people were taking out our labels because sometimes they look like this. This is our label that has a code on it. People, if you have a garment, like a jacket or something, that they need to take off in shot, then you suddenly have this label coming out. So we just made them look a bit like they could be the real label for the garment, and then they didn't take them out. These are all our hats. So they're organized in material, decade and color. The whole point of our stock, even though it can look a bit overwhelming, is to have it's quite organized so people can actually find things themselves if they need to be left by themselves. We go from kind of medieval up to the 1960s, and the women's even have a sneaky 1970s rail started, but it's tricky because when you get into, there's all the synthetics that comes in. Right. So it's a completely different beast, and the way we work with the whole circular thing, it just becomes a different thing. When we did Queen Charlotte, we made a lot of dresses actually for that, and they also used a lot of our stock. But we made kind of like the base of the dress, because the style that they've got is obviously, you know, a bit more over the top than what we would do, which is great. I mean, it's great and it looks fantastic. But they would add then their style of trimmings and things. And then when it came back to us, we took off all the bits that doesn't really work for us.
So when you kind of make something bespoke for a fitting, I mean, because obviously you have so many things here.
Yeah.
How do you kind of decide, no, we need to make that, or we can?
It's obviously down to the designer really. It can be either because they want something very specific and they can't find it, or it could be that they need to use it multiple times. Something needs to happen in the scene that will damage the costume, or it will need to be damaged, and then there'll need to be multiple versions. So then you have to make it, or you might have to copy the thing that they like and make it. Or it could be that they've fallen in love with something from our stock, but it's completely the wrong size for the person. For example, Ghosts, the TV series, So the 18th century ghost, they're ghosts, so they're going to have the same clothes on forever.
Yeah.
I think when they made the first series, I don't know if they were really sure if there was going to be any more series, because they rented everything from our stock. They rented her from our stock. And there was a very specific dress, obviously. When they came back to do the second series, that dress was out because they hadn't had, I think there was just no budget for paying for embargo, because our stock costumes doesn't automatically go on embargo. And it was out on an opera or something. And luckily, I remembered where the fabric was from. It's a shop called Hopkins that we use quite a lot. So it was quite a recognizable fabric, and we just remade it. And I said, you should really buy it because you need to keep it. She's going to be wearing this all the time. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problem again. There's one garment, there's a really lovely Edwardian one that is a remake of a real one that we have in the collections. It's one of these nice woolly ones that, oh, here it is. Oh, this is actually cotton, so it's not too bad, but that's your little easygoing beach wear. But this is a copy of a real one that we have in the museum. When we get to kind of Edwardian onwards, or I usually say 20s and onwards, but I think actually some of these as well, then we do get a lot of real garments. It's not just copies of real garments. This is the women's alteration room.
Oh, wow.
So in women's alterations, so when we have stock fittings with all the things from downstairs, they sometimes come into the fitting to check if there's a big alteration that's needed, and then then they do all the alterations for all the stock costumes. Sometimes those can be just like taking up a hem or something. Sometimes they can be enormous alterations that are almost like remakes, and that happens when designers, see something that they want to have, and kind of slightly ignores what size the garment is. So this is a really old garment that was, I think it was an original that John used in this production from the 60s. That was one of the first productions that he did as Cosprop. So this has been refurbished to make sure it looks all right for the exhibition. But obviously we don't want to we don't want to refurbish it completely, because it's still part of what it should look like, to have, some of the wear and tear, really. These are two dresses that John designed for, so there's a few, obviously he's also designed a lot of productions himself, and a lot with Jenny. This is Golden Bowl, two dresses from the Golden Bowl. This is from Great Expectations, I think it was 1967. And John actually made this as well, so I think he did do some making in the beginning. Little Downton group. That's Maggie. This is Pride and Prejudice, the 95 one. And this is Emma. This is Anya Taylor-Joy from Emma. Those costumes are beautiful, and we made a lot of those. This is Judi Dench.
Oh,
Also from Jane Eyre. The most famous, I would say, is Pirates, Johnny Depp.
I think I had quite a lot of input into Downton when it started. And I would find things and offer them up to Susanna. And so that was a sort of really good way of working.
Because you must know the stock really well by now.
Well, not only the stock, it was where to get certain things.
Yes.
I remember a marvellous fur coat that I found in Camden Market that she wears in probably the first series. And it's so great with its collar and, very swish and very austere, just marvellous. But it had been badly stored, and we unfortunately think rats had on it.
Oh, God.
You gave it to
If I could clean or
and unfortunately, there wasn't time to have it cleaned before the fitting. So I sort of held it behind her to give her the idea. But eventually, put it on. And she put it on. But luckily, she didn't react to whatever might be coming up on the pile. Oh dear. But she looked extraordinary in it. And I've no idea what's happened to it. Certain productions will actually talk about that it must be very clear and definite. There was that production of, was it called Poor Things?
Yeah.
A film?
yes, yeah.
Yes. There was one lady that we dressed that was 1895, meant to be. And so the designer wanted the sleeves and the shape of skirt all slightly exaggerated to make the point of what this dress and would do with in the character terms. And so again, it depends on what the production is. You know, the other day someone really wanted to be an sort of amorphous heap, you know, sort of, I don't know, a bundle that moved.
Great.
And so we were quite happy to oblige. What I found as an actor was often it was the feeling of what you were wearing rather than the look. And so I think for one production I was put in a sort of clerical gown, and being small it almost came to the ground on me, and it gave one a really good feeling of pomposity with all this stuff round it. And you imagine school teachers, you know, easily in it. So that was for a Shakespeare thing, and he was called Hollow Furnace, meaning empty-headed idiot. Anyway.
Yeah.
Where we first did a film thing was for the Charge of the Light Brigade in 1967. And so things kept adding, you know, and that's how it built up. And I suppose more or less ever since it's built up in that sort of way.
Yeah. It's
But
incredible.
one has to remember that the corner shop was no bigger than this room. No, it might have been the size of the two rooms together.